Okay, thanks for having me. Together, we now want to explore the Power BI data mart. I want to introduce myself a little bit. I'm Markus Wegener. I'm a Microsoft MVP, a super user, and Microsoft certified data analyst. You can find me on my blog, ThinkBI, also on LinkedIn and Twitter. So please follow me and keep in contact. Um, for today's sessions, I have many sources, so I make a little slide to present them all. In the last slide, I have some links to the different content these guys present, or also women have provided, so you can follow these links. Okay, let's start with one of the statement to the data marts from the guy in the cube. So Power BI data marts is really about self-service data analytics. It is this idea of bridging the gap between the business user and the IT when it comes to databases. So we see here, there's a statement that the data mart thing is something to bridge the gap. There should be a gap between the business users and the IT, and it's important that this comes to databases. There's another statement I have found by Matthew Roach. Power BI data marts are like data flows with benefits. So it must have something to do with data flows, and it must have some benefits to the data flows. And one last statement, Datamarts is a fully managed SSIS service, no code required to do an end-to-end analytic project. So we see here by the statement from Casper de Jong that there is something with no code experience when it comes to an end-to-end analytics project. So let's start with the gap filled by the self-service BI. So on the one side, we have the business user, which is something the business user work with Excel reporting, with expert opinions. And on the other side, we have the IT, which is something where there are data warehouses and enterprise systems. And between these two areas or departments, there seems to be a gap. And this gap should be filled by all the self-service BI tools. And one new thing here in the Microsoft Power BI world is the data mart. Okay, we have a lot of words here, data marts, database, data warehouse, data lakes. What are all these things? I try to make a little chart about this to see all the things here. We have on the left side our raw data, structured and unstructured data, which are loaded to our system via data pipelines. So it's like raw materials which are loaded via pipelines to a factory, data factory in the Microsoft world. The data can be stored in silos in something like a data lake. On top of this data lake, we can often find something like a data warehouse where we structured the data, centralize the data like a warehouse in the real world. And then we have to or could prepare subsets of data with data flows and bring this data now to a data mart. The data mart is a specialized subset of data like a specialist store where we have a database, which is like a store space, and where we can find tables. It's like retail shelves in the store. In the other case, we can have other sources like special goods, which are loaded to the data mart. And if we have a small company, we maybe have not a data warehouse at all. So we only use special sources and always connect directly to our systems. So let us have a look on the model or with a small diagram, what are data flows. So we have here our sources on the left side. We use the Power Query Online engine to load and prepare this data. This data are stored in a Azure Data Lake Gen 2. Maybe it's a hidden Azure Data Lake managed by Microsoft, or you bind your own data lake to it. And there are the data are stored in this data lake in a model JSON file for the information about the structure and the information of the data load, and on the other side in CSV files where you store your data or where your data is stored. If you have a premium capacity, you can use it to get advanced features like SQL cache and SQL cache with the enhanced compute engine to get better query performance, and you can use machine learning capabilities for your data files. So the benefits of this data flows are the reusable ETL package, the decoupling from the data source, that we can use the data flows for different schedules, for incremental refresh. In the behind the data flows, there's a concept of the Azure Data Lake and the common data model. I will just jump to this little overview. So the idea is that you can use the Azure Data Lake Gen 2 and the common data model or the folders for the model to connect different applications on a central base in this architecture. And here you find the capabilities of also for AI. There are some premium features. I already mentioned it. The SQL cache, the opportunity with the SQL cache to do direct query, the use of computed entities so that we can make calculation on already loaded entities, and the opportunity to use the linked entities, and also the opportunity to load or to make an incremental refresh. So if we switch now to the Datamart, we see it's a premium only feature at the moment. We have still our data sources, we have still the Power Query engine, but now only the model informations are stored in our Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage, and the data itself are loaded into an SQL database. Inside the SQL database, we can bring in some row-level security. We get an auto-generated data set, which is connected per direct query to the SQL DB. And we also can model in this Datamarts the relationships between the tables and the measures. So the benefits of this is we get a better performance. I think the better performance belongs to the direct access to different files on different systems. We get the benefit of the web authoring. So this is the first time that Microsoft provides us in the Power BI world an end-to-end web experience for the data load and the modeling and the report building. We get at the moment 100 gigabyte storage for our Datamart. We have the possibility to connect to the Datamart via SQL. We can use row-level security on the database side, and we got the opportunity for the B2B sharing. I only want to mention it that this is actually a preview feature, so maybe some features will be incomplete or change in the future. So be careful if you use this this new feature, and I think you should not use it actually in production. So okay, here are some considerations and limitations. I will zoom in for some points. Here you see the one point that the Datamart currently officially support data volumes up to 100 gigabytes. One other interesting thing is here the supported SQL clients. At the moment, you can only use supported the SQL Management Studio and the Azure Data Studio. And one other thing, okay, this seems to be new from the last time I see the site, that the Datamart are currently not supported in Microsoft Teams. And some other thing was it was here, the Datamarts are not available in Workspace that are bounded to an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account. This seems not to be correct because I already use it in such a workspace. So let us, oh, sorry, okay. Let us have a look on my environment. Here we have on my workspace, my demo workspace for the Datamart. You can see it here on the top. It's a premium per user workspace, so we can use this feature. And when we start with this, let me take a look on my slides. Here we can go to New and select the Datamart. Directly by side of the data flow. If you select data flows, actually, Microsoft are providing you the new feature and show you that there's a new opportunity to use the Datamart, and we can also start our tour with, say, yes, create a Datamart. So in this moment, Microsoft is creating a SQL instance or provisioning an SQL instance in the background. And some minutes later, we should get an new interface, or the Power Query Online interface. Okay, here we are. So we have here our point to start our building of the data mart. And we can use here the get data dialog to load our new data or our own data into this data mart. So I press get data. One. Normally we reload the site. Let us see. Okay, let's see. Something wrong. Okay, here we have our created data mart. I hope now we get the dialog. Yeah, here we are. So here we have all the different sources where we can load the data. I think for business user general, the most interesting part is to load the Excel workbooks from their SharePoint or OneDrive files. So this is the case we want to show in the next minutes. So we have here the possibility to say, okay, we want to load the Excel workbook and a nice interface to browse our OneDrive. I click on this. So you should see here our directory. I select my Excel file directory. Here is an Excel file, the Adventure Work Sales demo. I want to load this file and select this and press next. So now we get the navigator dialog and see all the tables and spreadsheets from this Excel workbook. I select the customer, the date table, the product table, and the sales as effect table. You see here we get a preview of the data and go then to transform data. Now we are back in the Power Query Online experience. I think this should be similar for you. I don't want to do so much in this view, but here in the date table, there was an auto detection from the file type, data types. And if I go back here, you see that the date or this column should be text columns, because it's a part of the formatted date in this date table, and Power Query detected them as date column, so we change this back as a text. Here we place the current. And here, this is true. And after that, we can say save and load the data. So we get a nice overview about all the steps which are done now to loading the data to the Datamart. The new possibility is here to go to the workspace and let this process run in the background, but we should wait here for some minutes and then we see the results. So I take a short look to the station. Okay. So what we get here is something which is nearly close to your Power BI desktop experience. There we are here in the data view, and we can start browsing our data on the selected table. We can filter them, we can sort them. This is yeah, very close to the Power BI desktop experience, but here on the button we have new options. The first thing is the designer. So it's a query designer from Power BI. You can now inside the or create SQL queries in a visual way inside of your browser. So I drag and drop the first table. And we see here we have a visual representation of this query, and on the button we get the results. So I add a new table to this query field. So now we have two tables. We can merge them together as one big result. So I select here the product table, use the key columns, say that I want to make a left outer join and say OK. So we get here the new result. And the end of the table, we can now expand our product or the columns from the product table. I select the category and subcategory from this table and say OK. So this will result to a new query with these fields, new fields, and then I can say, okay, I want to group my data. Let us search it, group by on these two columns, and I want to make or have the sum from the sales amount. Here is okay, and here we get our results. So that's very cool and fancy, but for now there are some features missing, or in my opinion, and I see such things in some screenshots. So I will show you this from presentation. So this was one thing I have seen in one of the recordings, that is the possibility to view the SQL from this virtual or visual query designer, which is not available at the moment. And the other thing which is actually missing is the possibility to export the data or open the result in an Excel file. And you see here in this screenshot from this tool, there should be also a possibility to save these queries or to have a storage for these queries we are created in this visual designer. I will switch back to my web browser. So you see here, actually, I can't change the name of this query. I can't add new queries to this ribbon, and I don't have any possibilities to save it or to view the SQL part of this. The SQL part is a good topic because we have here another area, the SQL area. So in this SQL area, we can type our own queries in the SQL syntax. I have prepared some statement here. I will add this. So we make a select on the sales tables. I will zoom in a little bit. A sales table, join the customer table to it. On the customer keys, we'll group it by the regions and order the result by the sum of sales amount. So let's just run the query here. We get the result, and in this view, we are able to make an export or open it to Excel. When I click on this icon, we get here an Excel file. I open this Excel file. One moment. So we see here there's no data in this Excel file because what we are exporting is is a Power Query inside this Excel. So I enable this edit and enable the content, and you see here, one moment. So that there's a native query inside this inside this Excel file. It's the statement I already bring in or copied in this window, and it's connected to SQL Datamart database. And if I click on Run and use my Windows credentials, Microsoft account credentials, it will load the data into this Excel file. So this Excel file, after exporting, is still refreshable because all the informations of the query are inside of this Excel file. Okay. Next step. Okay, yeah. The next thing is if we go outside the Datamart and go to this workspace here at the end, we find our Datamart, and on the setting of this data or setting page of this Datamart, there are these server settings, and the server setting are the connection string to the underlying Azure SQL database. We can copy the string and use it in our SQL Management Studio. We'll copy in this URL. I use the Azure Active Directory authentication, say connect. So this should connect us directly. Let me see. To our Datamart. We see here there is our Datamart database. You find your results under views. So there you can't access the tables directly. You only have access to some views. And if I create here a new query and let me copy the statement, our SQL statement in here, same query like last time, I hit execute and we get also the same result here in the SQL Management Studio. So now we have the possibility to work with different tools to connect directly with SQL to our Datamart and can make some analysis to this underlying data. I want to show you something. If I click to the table and say I want to script this create or to this view, and I want to script this view in a query window, we can see here something interesting. So we have our view in the schema model, and this view is selecting the data from a table in the background, which are stored in the schema storage. So you see there are different schemas for this area, and we only have actually only the opportunity to select or make queries on these views from the schema model. Okay, let us come back to the Datamart in the Power BI service. So I enter this here and go to this last section, the model section, which is similar to the Power BI desktop model section or area. We have now the possibility to create data models inside of the Power BI service. So I will arrange this fact table in the center and place the dimension tables around this and start connecting these tables with each other. So one thing I want to show you is you can use the product key or you should start with the column from the fact table and drop this to the dimension table. This dialog will be open. So you see it's a cardinality from many to one. The many table is the sales table, and the one table is the product table. So we can confirm this relationship. If you see, okay, if we do this from the other side and drag the customer key to the fact table, or the customer key from the fact table. Okay, no, I don't got it, but let's try again. The dialog start, and here is the mistake. The first table, the dimension table, is marked as many, and on the other side, the fact table is on the one side. So, and you can switch it here and confirm it to see that you get the right connection between the tables. So this is something you should be aware of. That is a good approve to come from the fact table and drop the columns to the, oh no, I want to start with the order date key, with the dimension table. Okay, let us do this multiple times to get a first data model and shipment date. You can do more thing, close, but yeah, all the things connections are set. Okay, you see this is something, it's a preview, and you get sometimes strange messages, so try it, and it should work. If you want to make some settings, you find this properties on the right side. I think it's nearly the same like you know it from the Power BI desktop. So we can bring the key table or key columns to the top. We can hide this columns from the view. It's not my best. Today it seems that the Power BI service has some problems. No, it's working. So I will stop hiding more columns. Just see that we can make some other change. So if we have something like this, that we have a month column and we want to change the order, you will find this here on the ribbon or on the property side, so that you can change the order of this column. And you can also add some measures, or can add measures to this data model. So if you press new measure, you should get this formal bar on top and enter here your MDX expression, like sales amount. Okay. The intelligence is also working. And now we have a measure here, or a measure here in our table. So we are now able to create data models inside the Power BI service and make some of this thing as we in the past can only do in the Power BI desktop. But something to mention, there's no, actually you only or you have to create a report on this data set to see what's the result of your MDX or your DAX, your measure calculation, and you are not able to make DAX calculated tables or calculated columns inside of this view. I think it's because here you can go directly to the data and make this new column or new table by enter data or by transformation inside from Power Query, and don't have to use DAX for this. But maybe it will come in the future. And the other thing to show is here the opportunity to manage rules, to create a row level security on this data model. If I click on this, you see a new dialog pops up. It's so we can create a role. We will call it Germany. I confirm the role name here. It's very important. I often forget this. And you see here the experience is different to the existing Power BI desktop behavior, because here we have a simpler version of the rule editor. We don't create a DAX statement to set the rules, so we only have this visual representation and can filter or make some static rules, like the country region should be Germany. Save this. So we have not the opportunity to make or to create dynamic row level security rules depending on the actual user, or depending on hierarchy structure. But we can here assign these rules directly inside the service to our members, so we don't have to upload this file because it's already in the service, and bring this to work. I think this more simple row level security settings are part of the point that we can now use this, or the role-level security is also enabled for the SQL connection. So if we can check our rule by using this view as button. We select our rule Germany, go back to the SQL query part. We will copy our statement we have run last time and run this again. And you see now we only get our German, or the data from the region Germany. So this role level security is now published directly to the SQL layer, and we don't or is not part of the data model inside the Power BI data set. And so in this case, we have this simpler part of permissions. Okay, so let us change the name for our file. Here on top, you can click on the name part and rename it. So let us call it PBI. So this is one way you can change the name of this dataset, or you go to the workspace and on the three dots here, you can use the rename step part. Okay, so let us create a report on this data mart. So we use this create report part. So we have the web experience for the Power BI report creation. I will do some easy visualization. So we use the sales amount on a bar chart. I put this in the first quarter. Remove the big outlier. Copy this chart and change the customer to product. Copy this chart again. Make here chart some months, bring this and sort the axis months. And if you, or the interaction is still available, so if you click here on one product, you see all these charts are filtered down by the selection. And I think you see the performance. It's okay for this amount of data. So a typical business user can use it, and it's really an end-to-end experience inside the browser, and the possibility also for Mac users to use Power BI as an or for data modeling in the browser. Okay, let us save this. And go back to the workspace. Something I want to show you is if you go to the automatic generated dataset, you will see that here are less options. You don't find the setting part for scheduling the refreshment and other things. That's because it's part of the data mart now. So here you find the settings part. Inside the settings area, you can switch to the ribbon dataset, where you find some more settings for your dataset part for this special or for this auto-generated dataset. Here's also the connection string for the data model. We can copy it, but at the moment it's so that if you use some tool like DAX Studio and want to analyze your DAX statement or want to write your DAX statement with this tool, and I say connect, okay, my authentication, you will get an error that you have no permission to access this dataset via the XML endpoint. So this is maybe something which will come in the future, but actually you are not able to use such external tools like DAX Studio or tabular editor to change the model or to analyze your model. But let us have a look in the Power BI desktop. There is a new part here on top of the ribbon. So there's our data hub, and here you find the data mart as preview option to connect this data mart. If you select this option, I hope, you get this data window. We can select our data mart, and since the last release, we are now able to say that we want to connect live to our data set, or that we want to create a new data set on the SQL endpoint of the data mart. So we can now connect to the data mart via SQL. Okay, here is my authentication. We get now the navigator. And can select our tables. I don't mention it before. Here are also some metadata table with the relationships we have created in our data model. So I want to load the customer, the data, the product, and the sales table, and say transform data. So now we can choose if we want to use an import mode or a direct query mode. I prefer the import mode, so I will go on with this. Now you see here the queries have the schema name in front of the table name, so I would remove this. And if I scroll at the end of this table, it's very interesting. I have never seen this before. You also get the related columns from the relationship. I never knew that you can have this relationship information inside of a view. So here you see is the customer key, and here the information for this particular area and the connection. If we load this data, I would recommend you to remove the schema name before the table. And to remove these columns with the related informations. And then press on load, and then the data should be loaded to your Power BI desktop file, and you can use it like every other data source in the past. just to mention it, sometimes I get an error with a timeout. Just wait, reload it. It's during the preview period. It seems to be normal that you have some errors during this time. I'm not sure why it happens. I make a ticket to Microsoft, but I think in the future it will work very good. So let us have a look to the next stack. Okay, yeah. One thing I want to show you is the fact that I show you it in the service before. I have connected my workspace here in the settings to an Azure storage. And if we take a look to this storage via the Azure Storage Explorer, you find here the block container Power BI. You find here my workspace for the Datamart demos. And here you find folders for each data flow or for each data mart. The last one is this. Oh no, we have to refresh this. Interesting. Maybe I have to. Okay, never mind. We can use some other. You should find a folder from your data mart. Inside the folder is a model JSON file. I already opened and formatted one in Visual Studio Code. So you see here, there's your model JSON file. Inside the JSON file, you find the information about the tables here inside, or the entities which are inside these tables. You find the structure of your tables or the columns with these data types. You find this partitions which are directed to a specific Microsoft internal storage here. And somewhere, I think it's here on the top, here is a long part documentation where you find all your Power Query transformations strings which are inside your Power Query, or you have used inside your Power Query online part. So I thought in the past that this is or that the data are stored in a Azure data lake, but some of the Microsoft engineers write on one of my LinkedIn posts that it's not stored in or that the data is not stored in the RDLS. That is the artifact from the current CUM data model. The data is loaded directly into the SQL database. So these are only artifacts, but the data are directly loaded to an SQL instance. So that's I find this very interesting. So I think I'm in time, so I want to share with you one other slide. I mentioned it before. There are a lot of information out there. You can find something from Corbel, what is Datamarts, from Matthew Roach, a blog post, data flows with benefit from Christopher de Jong. There's a video podcast out there with the topic, what is Datamart? Guy in the Cube had made some videos exploring the preview of Datamarts and Power BI data flows versus Datamart. What's the difference? Oh, sorry. Redicat made a series of videos about Datamarts. There are some other speakers out there which presenting about this topic. There's Datamark, with one slide you can find here. I will share the links later, or I'll send you the presentation so that this presentation can be shared. Greg Nash make this topic or speak about this. A first look at Power BI Datamart, and I recommend you this Microsoft Mechanics YouTube video, Datamarts in Power BI, which gives you a first overview with all the topics and screenshots I have shared with you, which will come later in this year, I think later in this year, with this new features about storing queries inside the Power BI Datamart and use the export functionality with the visual editor so that you can view the SQL query behind this visual editor and export the query to Excel. So this was my little tour, or our little explanation about Power BI Datamart. Thank you for your time, and I'm open for questions now.